Joining me from Miami is Republican Senator Marco Rubio of Florida. Senator, thanks so much for being here, and happy Father's Day to you.
And to you and to everyone watching, all the fathers, happy Father's Day.
So let me ask you, President Trump took to Twitter this week to lash out at Special Counsel Robert Mueller and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. Let me read you one of the tweets. Quote, "You are witnessing the single greatest witch hunt in American political history, led by some very bad and conflicting people. Hashtag Make America Great Again." Some of your Senate colleagues, as you know, are concerned that President Trump is preparing to fire Mueller and Rosenstein. How would you react if he did?
Well, first of all, that's not going to happen. I don't believe it's going to happen. And here's what I would say. The best thing that could happen for the president and the country is a full and credible investigation. I really, truly believe that. If we want to put all this behind us, let's find out what happened. Let's put it out there. And let's not undermine the credibility of the investigation. And so my view on it is that's the best thing that could happen for the president and for the country. And I believe ultimately that's what will happen, irrespective of all the other stuff that's going on out there.
Would you have predicted that he was going to fire Comey? I wouldn't have.
Well, I don't think anybody saw that coming, but I don't think that has in any way impeded the work of the FBI on these matters. And in fact, I know it hasn't. And they've testified so publicly as well. And it hasn't impeded the work of the Senate Intelligence Committee. So, you know, these investigations continue to move forward. They're broad. They're about everything. At its core, the Senate's work is about Russian interference and how they did it. And if it involved working with Americans, whether wittingly or unwittingly, that needs to be a part of it. But again, I think everyone should wait for the report to come out. And we continue to make progress in that direction.
Do you have any questions about the integrity of Mueller or the way he's conducting the investigation?
No, I have no reason to. His reputation is stellar, as everyone has said, and I believe he's going to conduct a full and fair and thorough investigation that we should have confidence in. And I'll continue to believe that based on his reputation and years of service to our country, unless there's any evidence to the contrary.
You said that the investigation is making progress. Do you have any idea when it might be concluded?
Hopefully soon. I think I can't really speculate about the time frame. That's up to the chairman and the vice chairman on the time frame of it. But there's a lot to work with here. There's a lot to do, and hopefully we'll begin to pivot back and focus on the core issue before the United States Senate Intelligence Committee, which is how did the Russians interfere in our election? What methods did they use? And it's important for the American people to know that, because we're going to have elections all the time in this country. We're going to have them in off year this fall. We're going to have them next year for Congress and throughout the country for governors and statewide races in places like Florida. And so people need to know this. The best antiseptic to these interference efforts is to know exactly how they're conducted, so that we can be prepared to, not just to prevent it, but to react.
You spent time with President Trump on Friday, just hours after he lashed out at the people leading the Russia investigation. Did the president have anything to say when you were there with him about Mueller, Rosenstein, or the Russia investigation when you saw him?
No, nothing that he hasn't already said in public, and he said it to a big group, and it's the same thing he has said over and over again, is that I had nothing to do with this. Just the same stuff you've seen him say on Twitter. It wasn't the core of a conversation, but the same thing he has said on Twitter and in front of the press. But obviously that wasn't the centerpiece of our visit. So, but you know, the president has strong feelings about it. And what I would communicate to the White House and to the world through this broadcast is, let this thing work its way through. Let it be thorough and complete so that no one will have any doubt. I think I'm telling you, that is the best thing for them, and it is certainly the best thing for America.
But just to underline this, and then we'll move on to the issue that you were talking about with the president, the new Cuba policy. It's not a witch hunt. You believe in the integrity of the investigation.
I do, because I believe in Bob Mueller's record of serving our country. If there was ever any evidence of the contrary, then obviously that may change, but I don't anticipate that being the case.
So let's turn to Cuba. The president announced a new policy on Friday, one that seeks to undo some of President Obama's normalization of relations with the communist nation. President Trump said he was motivated by human rights concerns. That was really the focus of his speech. But, you know, to be candid, President Trump has downplayed human rights concerns in his dealings with any number of other countries, including China, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the Philippines. I know that that's not your position, but that is this double standard. Does that bother you at all?
Well, the one thing they would say to you is that they challenge the world to do more to create stability in their own regions. And the Western Hemisphere is the region that we're in. And I would say, is it our national security interest to have human rights and democracy in our region? Because the absence of those two things leads to migratory pressure and instability. Whether it's Haiti or Cuba or Mexico or Central America, so much of the migratory pressure on the United States is created by instability in the Western Hemisphere. And so there is a national security interest in our region in creating stability and democracy. And the other thing I would say is, if you look at the Western Hemisphere, 30 years ago, the majority of the countries were governed by dictatorships or strongmen. Today, every country in the hemisphere has had at least one free and fair election in the last decade and a half or so, and except for one, the island of Cuba. And so hopefully we're getting closer to the day when that happens there as well.
Let's turn to health care. One of your Republican colleagues, Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, says she hasn't even seen the health care bill because it's being hatched and devised in secret. Take a listen to her.
Yeah, I've got a problem with it. If I'm not going to see a bill before we have a vote on it, that's just not a good way to handle something that is as significant as and important as healthcare.
Do you share her concern, Senator?
Well, here's how I would characterize it. When you work on something like this, like when I did on immigration, there's a group of people that works on it, okay? And then they put out a package or they put out a bill, and then that bill goes through the process, a committee hearing, floor action, amendments. I would say that if that bill's not going to go from that group to the president's desk, that bill has to at least have a vote in the Senate, and I hope it's a vote that allows plenty of time for debate, analysis, and changes, and input. And if that's the process we follow, it'll be fine. If it is an effort to rush it from a small group of people straight to the floor on an up or down vote, that would be a problem. The Senate rules are not conducive to that sort of action. And so, again, I think that we need to all kind of stop here and understand that no matter what that group works on and produces, it's only a starting position. From that, every other senator will have an opportunity, I believe, should have an opportunity to weigh in and make changes or propose changes.
The Trump administration announced this week that it will not immediately eliminate protections for the so-called dreamers, undocumented immigrants who came to the U.S., were brought here as children through no fault of their own. But White House officials on Friday said that President Trump had not made a decision about the long-term fate of the program. Are you encouraging President Trump to keep these protections in place for the remainder?
We haven't talked about it, but I've said publicly before that I do think that DACA is going to have to come to an end at some point, and because I do believe it's unconstitutional, whether you agree with the merits of it or not. But I also believe that it should be replaced. It comes to an end because it's replaced by something that's constitutional, which is a legislative action. And I think the vast majority of Americans would say that if you were brought here as a young child, have grown up in this country, have a lot to contribute to our future, it doesn't make a lot of sense after years of investing in you and our public education system and the like to send you to a country that you perhaps have no memory of just because you happen to have been born there and lived there till you were 4 years old. Now, this policy that's in place to simply yank it away from people that have those permits now will be very disruptive, not just to them, but to the places they work, as an example. A lot of these young people are now actually employees and working for people. So my hope is that as part of this process, we can work on a way to deal with this issue and solve it through legislation, which is the right way to do it and the constitutional way to do it.
Senator Marco Rubio, Republican of Florida, it's always good to have you on the show. Thank you so much. Happy Father's Day again. Hope you get a nice tie.
Likewise. Thank you.